Welcome to Cut to the Chase, where we talk about compelling legal, regulatory, and public interest information and news. Your host is Gregg Goldfarb, an attorney, entrepreneur, investor, and activist.
All right, folks, it's time for our favorite podcast. Yes, our favorite podcast, Cut to the Chase. Bringing on Russell Adler, a fellow native Floridian. I don't know, are you native?
No, I've been in Florida for 50 years now.
All right, you're officially native. I'm going to sing a little bit for just a second here. The times, they are a change. And this podcast is really for those lawyers out there that are saying to themselves, my God, I'm supervising all these lawyers and they are really in need of help, of coaching help. Russell is a performance and mindset coach. And as a lot of us lawyers that are sort of in the second half of our career realize, COVID and this remote working has really affected the quality of lawyering. And so Russell is here to help. If you have a lawyer or a law firm and you have lawyers that need help, here's your solution. You're going to listen to Russell. How are you doing today, Russell?
I'm great, Greg. Thank you for having me today.
And I would imagine that the R on your cap stands for Russell.
That's correct. My own personal brand.
That's tremendous. Now, Russell has 27 years under his belt as a civil trial lawyer with over 200 jury trials. And now he's doing the coaching. Some of the coaches out there that I see that, coach lawyers, they weren't even lawyers themselves. So Russell can distinguish himself by the fact that he's actually run that course, knows what it's all about. And Russ has an exciting program that's going to be released very soon. And so brought him on the show to talk about it. Let's go, Russ. I've talked enough. Let's talk about what you do, what kinds of help you can provide to lawyers in need, law firms that have lawyers in need, and what you're going to be releasing, what kind of program. So let's start first about generally speaking.
Well, generally speaking, my differentiator is the fact that I did practice. There are other coaches out there who are practicing lawyers. I have that in my past. I did it for 27 years, and for the past 10 years or so, I focused on the coaching and mostly the mindset and performance coaching in the civil litigation space, not just personal injury work, but that. And what that means is that all of the things that I help lawyers get around, get past, get through in their lives, I've been through myself. So there's a tremendous amount of empathy there. But having been there and having worked for and against hundreds of lawyers, if not thousands, over the years, I have this incredible fund of knowledge that has really allowed me to help lawyers perform better, become a better version of themselves, as I like to say. So that's the overall what I do. I work for several firms at any given time, usually on a monthly retainer basis. And I love what I do. I'm very passionate about it, and I've seen great results in the lawyers I've worked with and helped.
So as a lawyer, we get together and we talk about our issues in our practice, issues with ourselves, issues with colleagues. And, my personal opinion is that the COVID and the remote work has really done a lot, has stunted the growth of a lot of the younger attorneys in the sense that they're not going to court and having to walk and talk and chew gum at the same time. They're not physically meeting their opposition. They're not in front of a jury. I mean, once in a while, but then they're like, oh my God, I haven't been to a courtroom. Do you see in your day-to-day work that has become a problem in the legal industry? And if so, how?
Well, everybody will remember how much change COVID brought about. Starting with Zoom immediately, the immediate adaptation of Zoom it was all hearings at the time. Now I think it's down to most hearings, most depositions, most mediations, all of these face-to-face opportunities that no longer exist for lawyers. Now, anyone who's, let's say, in their 40s or older knows full well what I'm talking about when it comes to the face-to-face and all the inconvenience that comes with it, driving to Miami for the hearing or for the deposition, traveling for depositions, going to mediations and depositions, getting face-to-face with people, developing soft skills. These things are all a given for older lawyers. But I work with a lot of lawyers who were barred in 2020 and since. In other words, for the past 4 years, it's been a totally different world than other lawyers are used to and expect of their associates. So I call it a case of like arrested development, really. They haven't had a chance to develop soft skills or build relationships. Everything's on Zoom. You can't train people on Zoom. It's at face-to-face, so it's completely different. And I do help fill that void. I bring the wisdom and experience with me and the know-how to help these lawyers, just to answer questions that they get into just in these situational questions that come up and issues, but also in the bigger picture. Because I remember, my cases were all tried in person in front of live juries. I know we're back to live trials now, but that's about the only thing that goes on at the courthouse that's live.
Yeah, the mediations, the depositions, judges would require you to appear for hearings specifically to get you and your opposition to sit down side by side while you're waiting for the hearing, and maybe you resolve that issue without the judge having to get involved. Maybe you resolve the case or parts of the case just by being present. And so I think that is really missing now. I mean, I never see my opposition except for, on Zoom. And I think that's done a disservice to the legal system, but that's why you're here. Okay. So I want to kind of dig down a little bit more in terms of what you can do for the younger lawyers. I would imagine that your target audience, in terms of who you can help, would be the quote unquote younger lawyer, the lawyer that's been practicing from day one to maybe 10, 15 years. Is that, what where you think you can effectuate change and help with your coaching?
The majority of lawyers I work with are younger lawyers. They're also in my target audience, but so are the lawyers who they work for. By the way, we all know lawyers, older ones, who have problems, they have issues. Maybe they're arrogant. Maybe they're passive aggressive. Maybe they're entitled. All these issues that no one ever grabbed them and fixed. And so they got baked in. And, lawyers are kind of like concrete. When as soon as you pour the concrete, it's very pliable and moldable. But when that concrete dries, or when those lawyers get older, you got to get out the jackhammer to make changes.
Yeah.
Change some of these ingrained problems. So my whole thought is I like to get involved early with these lawyers who are all struggling. Everyone struggles with something. And the one thing I see in common are what I call these default settings that we're born with, baked into our DNA, like impulsivity, the fight or flight reflex from when we were cavemen, right? Impulsivity creates a lot of problems for lawyers who may speak or act without thinking things through, especially when it's on behalf of a client. It calls to mind the old saying, act in haste, repent in leisure. That's one of my most frequently used power proverbs, that I call it. Proverbs are very sticky. Lawyers remember proverbs. And that's why they're great teaching devices. So lawyers remember them at the right time. But impulsivity is really behind a lot of these problems. Struggles with objectivity, just failure to look at the other side of a situation. I find that a lot of young lawyers today tend to conflate their own personal opinion with reality. So you might bring up an issue and they tell you something. They would tell me something and I'd say, really, is that the law? Is that what the law says? And they say, well, I think so. Well, did you do research? Did you look at the law? Can you tell me exactly what the law says? No. Oh, so you're just substituting your opinion for what you think the law is without even thinking about it, right? That's a struggle with objectivity. That's a real problem. And honestly, it's frightening. So I try to grab these things and get in their faces. I am paid to get into lawyers' faces and to challenge them on some behaviors and to help them change. And if they can change, they can become, if they can get around their problems, they can become happier. And if they're happier, they can be passionate about what they do. And the future is wide open.
Let's just say, a managing partner says, oh my God, this is exactly what I need. I've got 5 younger lawyers and they're all just like, they're arrogant. They don't listen. They're very predictable in their mannerisms, their psychological activity that's not really beneficial is pretty apparent. How do you assess these issues? Or are you relying on the lawyer or the law firm that hires you to say, hey, Johnny is just a big pain in the ass and cannot ever accept defeat. Mary is very passive and just, accepts whatever the other side, throws down her throat. How do you know what these people need?
Well, if you just start with their ages, that is a big tell. There are these generational characteristics, like the latest batch of lawyers are Gen Zs. There are some characteristics that have been associated with Gen Zs. I don't assume that they all have it, but I see that a lot of them do. Things like lack of a work ethic. They don't like to work very much.
Yeah.
They're very entitled. They think that they are deserving of things without having to work for them, and that's not normally the business model that a law firm has. They're impulsive. I hear from older lawyers who I know, oh, they're worse than ever. But then, as I recall, that's what they also said about the Gen X lawyers. So maybe, and it's also shorter attention spans. A lot of them seem to be challenged when it comes to attention spans. As someone who has ADHD myself and has used it as a tremendously effective weapon as a trial lawyer, actually, I know it doesn't work out that way for everyone, but a lot of people are challenged that way. And I tell them, if you're not on medication, you should go talk to a doctor about it. It might be able to help you because that holds people back.
Yeah.
And problems like that tend to upset employers who are very good at yelling and, saying things to them, and that doesn't really do anything to help them.
Yeah.
And so I when I was working for a large personal injury firm 10 years ago, where I really started out, I was working with about 10 lawyers at any given time. And yeah, you get to know them, you get to hear the perspective about them from the employer, and I very quickly can uncover a lot of the things they struggle with. And honestly, one of the best ways I have to find out what they're struggling with is simply to ask them. I literally say, I'm going to read you a list of 24 items. Okay? Tell me which ones you think you struggle with. And you'd be surprised, or sometimes someone would tell me, I get upset when the other lawyer doesn't return my phone calls. Right. And this guy told me that, it really upset him deep down inside. He took it personally, which was one issue. But I said to him, do you feel that you're entitled to be called back timely by opposing counsel just because you call them back timely? And he says, yes, I do feel that. I do feel entitled. So they literally will come out and tell you if you just ask.
Yeah.
But on top of that, there are things in each of us that other people see very clearly, but we don't really see in ourselves, right? And that's why it's important to take that holistic approach, to speak to the people who are signing their paychecks, to identify their problems, and to let the lawyer know that I'm there for their betterment.
Yeah.
Their betterment alone, right?
It sounds like some of these issues, at the very least, are the types of issues that people are in denial in the first place. They're resorting to these bad behaviors, and they're the type of behaviors that sound very challenging for someone like, a coach to say, listen, here's what you're doing wrong, or this is what you need to work on. A lot of these, like arrogance, if you throw out arrogance, how are you able to get past that and get them to at least acknowledge that maybe you're right, maybe they do have that particular issue? Or are you running into a lot of people that are just like you said, in the concrete, they're set in stone, and then they're also set in stone and in denial.
Well, in the field of mindset coaching, there's generally two types of mindsets that they talk about. One is a fixed mindset and one is a growth mindset. So the growth mindset is the one that is open-minded, that's always curious, that's interested in change and improvement and growth and whatnot. On the flip side, the fixed mindsets are the ones, it is what it is, this is how it is, and that's the way it is, and this is how I am, and I'm not really interested in changing, because I'm fine with myself, that sort of thing. So the fixed-minded people can really be a challenge. People, you can change someone's fixed mindset to a growth mindset if they're willing to do it. And it's a process. It's not done overnight. You can't just get out the crowbar and have an overnight change like that. They have to be willing to change. So yes, there are lawyers in the past who I have deemed to be uncoachable. After working with them and making suggestions, usually these people show up as giving feedback, pushing back on what I'm telling them, even though I tell them, look, I'm just in this for you. I'm here for your personal betterment. That's it, right? Sometimes they're paying me. Sometimes their employer is paying me. In one particular case, this guy's just a guy who I knew. I wasn't even charging him. But he was completely adamant and resistant to any change. And I finally said, look, I don't want to waste your time or mine. Some people just aren't coachable. But you have my number. Keep in touch. Now, I haven't heard from him. And, I hope these things don't get baked in because there's a lot of growth potential that lawyers have. They just don't see it.
Yeah.
But as older lawyers, we see it in the younger ones and we try to pass it on to them.
Right. And that's part of our profession is teaching and bringing up the younger generation. Yeah. A lot of people, speak poorly of our profession, and have encountered lawyers that are arrogant, that won't listen, that are very angry, very aggressive, and are not, conflict resolution oriented. I want to, like looking over your services, I can see that, in addition to helping lawyers become better lawyers and actually getting better results, you also will help law firms basically evaluate their cases, it looks like, and brainstorm on case issues to try to get better results.
I do that on some cases with some firms. But I'm really trying to move into the mindset coaching space exclusively, and as opposed to reviewing files. I'm scaling up my consulting practice now. I'm about to come out with my first digital learning product with a course called the Mindset Upgrade for Lawyers. And this is going to be for all lawyers, because no matter what type of law you practice, there are still common issues and struggles that people have. And the good news is that many, if not most of these things that these people struggle with are all thought-based. In other words, there is some thought, usually in what's known as an irrational thought, that comes to mind when something happens or at a certain time, and it results in this undesirable negative attitude or behavior, right? And those are the things that hold lawyers back, that prevent them from forming relationships, that earn them a bad reputation, and it can be a source of tremendous frustration, especially if they're a young lawyer. How many times can a young lawyer get yelled at before they decide that they hate what they do?
Yeah.
And I just try to show lawyers the other side of that and show them what they're capable of. And all I could say is that, at least with the lawyers I've worked with, I've met with tremendous success. Those who are willing, not willing to change, but just willing to try change to see what it's like, And once I gain their trust and I get to know them and they get to know me and trust me, that's when you can start making progress.
All right.
To
So I want to
answer
go
your
over the
question.
program that you're going to be releasing. I think you told me before we started today that you're going to have a soft release in about a week.
Yeah, a week to 10 days, probably.
All right. So what is the program? Is it video modules, or is it, one-on-one? What kind, who would benefit from this the most, and what should they expect out of the program?
Well, the course is really for all lawyers. It's for, yes, it's for lawyers who struggle, who have issues, but it's also for lawyers who just want to get better at what they do. And any issues or struggles they have, I literally show them in the course exactly how these things could be corrected. And they take them through the process to teach them what they have to do to correct these attitudes and behaviors. It takes some willingness on their part to do it, some persistence, some grit to hang in there, because it doesn't happen overnight, but it does work. And then the other part of it is I help them become much better communicators, because that's really a lawyer's stock and trade, are their words. And for that piece of it is the NLP part, neuro-linguistic programming. I was trained 20 years ago in neuro-linguistic programming. I thought it would make me a better trial lawyer. And when I went out and took this course and realized I was the only lawyer in the class, I knew I was onto something, and I really was. And it turned out it really changed me. It's baked into my psyche, and I use it in all aspects of my life. But when I practiced law for 27 years, probably the last 10 years of it, or yeah, about the last 10 years of it, using NLP, it completely transformed me as a lawyer. It made me a much better communicator, made me a much better trial lawyer. And so these are skills that I'm comfortable sharing with lawyers as communication techniques. And these are things NLP, now it's misunderstood a little bit for natural language processing, which is a AI term. But
Yeah.
this is neuro-linguistic programming created back in the 70s. And it's just a very powerful communication style. It's grounded in behavioral psychology and hypnosis.
Oh, nice. So will if I get this program, will I learn self-hypnosis, or is this just sort of an introduction to that way of handling things, and then I would take the next step and get the hypnosis to help me make my adjustment?
No, neither. So first of all, it is an online course, by the way. It's got quite a bit of video content. It's got a lot of copy. There's a lot to learn. There's a lot to be taught. There will be some streaming audio parts of it, but the full experience, the rich experience, is really browser-based to get the most out of it. And I offer a self-guided course or a 6-week course with weekly group coaching sessions in cohorts, either private cohorts for like a firm or open cohorts for whoever might sign up for it. But I'm sorry, what was the rest of your question? Because I went back to answer.
Just the hypnosis part of it is
The hypnosis part, that's right. So hypnosis in this context is relevant because in interpersonal skills, getting to know people, getting to gain their trust, getting into rapport with people, that's what rapport is defined as. We've all heard that word.
Yeah.
So NLP helps you get into rapport with anyone you like, or out of rapport, to break rapport with anyone you like. And hypnosis is simply being able to communicate with the unconscious mind. And it's something that, NLP is used extensively by people like Tony Robbins. It's used throughout the all kinds of sales training is all based on NLP concepts. Everyone uses bits and pieces of NLP. A lot of trial lawyers, most trial lawyers use it, but they don't realize they're using it. They don't realize they're using parts of it. They don't realize that there are other parts of what they're using. And so by giving structure and definition to that sort of behavior and teaching them these techniques, they can articulate it and build on it and become a much more effective communicator. So that's really the other piece of the course, helping people resolve barriers and problems and issues that are getting in their way or getting in the way of people they work with or relationships. And the other part is just being a better communicator moving forward. So it's loaded with my advice, what I call my greatest hits from 27 years of practice and from my coaching experience. And it's got a lot of use cases and examples that are contextual to lawyers dealing with fill in the blank.
Okay.
Clients, judges, opposing counsel, whatnot.
Gotcha. All right. So do you recommend that lawyers that have a big operation, have a lot of lawyers underneath them that they're supervising, that they maybe feel like they are not really getting their point across to, that they, the supervising lawyers, should get this program, take a look at it, and see if they think it will help, or just go straight to, should the lawyers themselves just say, you know what, I need it, let's do it? Or
No,
is this,
there'll be an informational page that pretty much describes what it is, why they should care about it, the kind of lawyers that we help, and what kind of results that they can expect to get out of the program. And from there, they can either book a Zoom call to get to know me, to speak to me about it, or they can sign up for the course for as many lawyers as they may wish. I also intend to do some free webinars on social media platforms, just to get my face out there, my name out there for those who don't know me from my podcast, and to explain what the course is about and to answer questions and things like that.
all right, good segue, because I was just going to go to the Interesting Lawyers podcast, from one podcaster to another. Want to talk about your podcast? What do you cover? Who are your typical guests? And, why should we listen? Who should listen?
So it's the Interesting Lawyers podcast. Most of my listeners are not lawyers. It is a lawyer show. As you know, a lot of people are interested in one part of the law or another. I'm about to have a prominent criminal lawyer, Bruce Zimmett, back on the show, because when Diddy began to have his problems and issues, Bruce Zimmett came on and explained about what it took for the feds to get search warrants of 2 houses in different states simultaneously. Obviously, that was one of my highest engagement episodes. And we talk about current events. He's going to come back on the show because Diddy just got indicted. I just saw that today. And he's going to come back on and talk about the indictment. So I try to talk about current events and things that the public cares about and is interested in listening to, and from the lawyer's point of view. So I have on lawyers of all stripes, all types. Plaintiffs' lawyers, defense attorneys, criminal lawyers. I had a great employment lawyer, Adam Kemper, on. And we always find interesting things to talk about because I have to live up to my name and keep it interesting.
Yeah, I hear you.
I look forward to having you on my podcast.
That's
and
the rumor.
The spirit of reciprocity. I look forward to having you, and I just enjoy doing it. And I'm hoping it's going to open some doors and get me some enrollment for my course. But I just think that it's a good, the podcast is kind of a labor of love. It's a passion I have. And of course, I'm building my own personal brand and authority, and that's really what it's all about. And let's see how the course does. But the course is really the only way I can bring my talents and my abilities to scale and really bring it out to serve a lot of people and really to help a lot of lawyers, because I always loved being a lawyer because you truly get to help people solve their problems. Lawyers help people solve their problems. I help lawyers solve their problems.
And it is better, in my opinion, my humble opinion, that the lawyering across the world is at its best and not at its worst. Bad lawyering it's not good for anybody. But all right, I'm going to leave two last things. One, what's the best way to get in touch with you? And two, aside from Cut to the Chase, what's your favorite podcast that you enjoy listening or watching?
I can be reached on my website, which is lawyerbetter.com. My YouTube channel, which is Lawyer Better or Russell Adler. Those are the best ways to get in touch with me, and I'll be announcing and promoting the course very shortly on all channels, everything from social media to YouTube to email and whatnot. So I hope that I can help people solve a lot of problems. My favorite podcast that I listen to religiously is Pivot with Kara Swisher and Scott Galloway. It's a business and technology podcast. It's apparently a very popular one. I love podcasts, although I don't listen to my own. But at least 5,000 or 6,000 people do, so I'm grateful for that.
Yeah. Well, because you know what you already said, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. So that's going to do it for this episode of Cut to the Chase with Russell Adler. Hopefully his course. You're going to take a look at it. You're going to subscribe or buy it, and it's going to help you and your other lawyers in your firm become better lawyers, which in my opinion would be beneficial to us all. And that'll do it. Russell, thank you very much. My call to action, I'm going to have show notes with Russell's info. My call to action, read the show notes, get in touch with him, focus on what we talked about today, and elevate your game. All right, Russell. So I'll see you in a month or so at your
Thank you, Greg. I really appreciate it and had a great time speaking with you today.
All right, my man. You be well.
That's all for this episode of Cut to the Chase. But before you go, will you open up your podcast app and give us a 5-star review? You can also leave a comment about what you liked most or other topics you'd like us to cover. And please be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any upcoming shows. Thanks, everybody. Be safe out there.